How I reclaimed my company after being fired as CEO. Fraud, Exposé, and comeback. Grant Holland stood in the factory, feeling a mix of emotions as he surveyed the scene. Brandon, a young and ambitious executive, stood at the head of the factory floor, surrounded by consultants in expensive suits. They were pointing at Gene Sullivan, an experienced and knowledgeable employee who had been with the company for 35 years. Gene had been a mentor to Grant, teaching him everything he knew about running operations. Brandon announced, "We're automating 60% of headcount within 18 months. He held up his phone, recording the moment. Grant nodded to Gene, a silent message of support. Brandon didn't know that Grant had recently been fired, but this was not the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning. Grant, now 48 years old, had a secret plan to take back what he had built. The firing had happened on a Tuesday morning, and Brandon had called Grant into the main conference room, where everyone on the floor could watch. Brandon read from a script, effective immediately. "You're relieved of all operational duties at Pierce Logistics. We're offering a transitional exit package through legal." Little did Brandon know, Grant had a hidden clause in his grandfather's trust that gave him control of the company. Not just shares, but control. And Grant was ready to take charge. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My brother, the new CEO, was dead serious about firing me. He slid the official documents towards me, a clear indication of the restructuring decision he had made. It was a harsh move, especially considering I had been with the company for a long time, and he was only 7 months into his new role. I tried to reason with him, but he was unwavering. "The board supports this decision," he said, reading from his prepared script. Then, he turned to Gene, my longtime colleague, and offered him early retirement, effective immediately. Gene, without a word, signed the papers, but his eyes spoke volumes as he left. It was clear that he felt torn between his loyalty to me and the promise of a secure pension. After Brandon left the room, I gathered my belongings and took the back stairs, determined not to put on a show for anyone. Gene was waiting for me near the loading dock. He handed me a USB drive, whispering, "Look at this when you get home." With that, he disappeared. The situation was a shock, but it wasn't the first time I had carried this company on my shoulders. I had been the driving force behind many of its successes, long before Brandon's arrival. Now, I had to pick up the pieces and move forward, armed with the knowledge that sometimes, even family can make tough business decisions. It all began 19 years ago, when my dad suffered a stroke. I was 29, having just completed my service in the Army as a logistics officer at Fort Benning. My brother, Brandon, sent flowers from Seattle, where he was working as a consultant. I returned home and took on my dad's responsibilities without a second thought. For nearly 2 decades, I arrived at the office before sunrise, dedicated to keeping the business afloat. The 2009 recession hit hard, and with the drawdown in Iraq, our military contracts were at risk. I worked tirelessly, putting in 70-hour weeks. I renegotiated supplier contracts, met with banks, and even sold half of our older truck fleet to ensure we could keep operating. I didn't ask for credit, I just wanted to prevent my grandfather's legacy from crumbling. That Christmas, Brandon flew home, looking dapper in his new coat, and commented that I seemed tired. He had no idea that I hadn't had a proper night's sleep in 6 months. He didn't know that I had taken out a second mortgage on my house just to make payroll. He wasn't aware that I had missed my dad's birthday because I was at Fort Bragg, negotiating to save our biggest contract. While he posed for family photos, I was signing loan extensions in my truck. Our relationship became strained after that. I told myself we were just wired differently. Brandon had a way with people, a room-filling presence. I, on the other hand, knew how to manage operations, to keep things running smoothly. Both skills were essential, but our paths diverged. I kept reminding myself that both pieces of information held significance. That particular evening, I connected Jean's USB drive. It took me around **10 minutes ** to grasp the information presented. I found financial records, details of wire transfers, and a series of emails exchanged between Brandon and an individual named Trevor Hull, who was associated with Pinnacle Partners, a private equity firm. The emails spanned a period of **14 months **, commencing shortly after my father received his cancer diagnosis. My father battled the disease for *11 months before he passed away. It became clear that Brandon wasn't merely aiming to succeed as CEO, he was actively making arrangements to sell the company while my father was gravely ill. The wire transfers revealed funds being moved from Pierce's operational accounts to offshore entities located in the British Virgin Islands. The transactions began modestly, with amounts like $35000 and $50,000. Over those *14 months *, the total sum escalated to $3.5 million *. The emails provided a clear picture. Brandon was planning to sell Pierce Logistics to Pinnacle Partners. He intended to extract the valuable contracts, dismiss a majority of the employees, collect his payout, and then vanish. I remained at my kitchen table until *2:00 a.m. absorbed in those files. Suddenly, I recalled a conversation with my grandfather from 4 years prior, 2 summers before his passing. It was a Sunday afternoon at his lake house. He beckoned me to the porch, offering 2 coffees and an old metal box. He asked, "Do you still take it black?" He posed the question, and I nodded, taking a seat. It struck me how much thinner he had become, a stark reminder of his deteriorating health, though we all refrained from vocalizing our concerns. "I have something for you," he began, his voice steady. "I've been meaning to give it to you for some time now." With a gentle gesture, he opened the box, revealing a leather folder and a heavy black pen, its surface engraved with his initials. I recognized that pen from my childhood. It was reserved for significant contracts. "That pen has been with me since 1953, he explained. "It was the instrument I used to sign my first freight deal. Don't ever lose it." Inside the folder were legal documents, a 38% stake in Pierce Logistics held in a private trust bearing my name, and a handwritten clause at the bottom, signed by my grandfather and his attorney, Lawrence Beckett. It read, "In the event of my termination without documented cause, full voting rights and veto power are immediately transferred to my name. No board vote is required." With the support of 3 board members who I knew would stand by my side, this 38% stake meant control. I was at a loss for words. Power has a way of changing people. "Your brother is more enamored with the idea of running the company than with the actual work itself," my grandfather continued. "Should he ever attempt to push you out, this will be your safeguard." I couldn't help but wonder if he truly believed my brother capable of such a move. I believe he will convince himself that it's the right business decision, and that's how these situations often unfold. People don't set out to be villains. They make compromises until they no longer recognize their own values. I gazed out at the serene lake, feeling a sense of responsibility. He had entrusted me with its safety, and I intended to honor that trust. "Use it if you have to," he said, his voice steady and confident. I made no promises, but I knew I would protect it. Fast forward 8 months, and my grandfather passed away. I locked away the folder and pen he had prepared for me in my closet, hoping I would never need to access them. But fate had other plans. One night, at 2 a.m., I found myself sitting at my kitchen table,